It has been a long journey filled with many, many rejections and even a few tears, but I am so excited to finally share that I have gotten my first short fiction piece officially published in a Litmag. And not just any literary magazine, but one of my absolute favorites. So today, I'm going to be breaking down the exact process I used to go from total beginner fiction writer with no experience writing fiction pretty much at all to being published in a Litmag. And I hope this helps you make your publishing dreams come true as well. Okay, so let's break down the timeline. I took my first ever serious fiction writing class and completed my first ever short story. But guess what? The teacher ripped that story to absolute shreds, gave me the worst critique I've ever received to this day, and it was a bit of a traumatic experience. But in fall of 2023, I decided to take more classes to improve my skill set. I wrote a piece that I felt was publishable, just kind of based on my own intuition about my growth as a writer, and also based on some much better and more encouraging instructor feedback. So then, by spring of 2024, I had accumulated over 50 rejections at that point, right? But I kept taking classes consistently, writing and pitching, just not letting those rejections get me down, just trying to improve and do better. And by the way, many of those rejections were tiered rejections from major literary magazines that were just like total dream lit mags that I just thought I had no chance at, but I just tried to stay delusional and pitch them anyway. But anyway, that was really exciting, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on in this little video. And then in fall of 2024, I finally got a piece accepted by one of my favorite literary magazines. So the piece is a microfiction piece, which is just a very, very, very short flash fiction piece or short story. Here's a little excerpt of it. It's published in X-Ray Literary Magazine. Again, one of my faves. You guys gotta check them out. They're truly an amazing lit mag. And I will also link the piece down below. I would love and just be so honored if you would check it out. It's like a couple hundred words, so it's not going to take you very long to read, don't worry. But anyway, this was my process to go from beginner fiction writer who had never completed a story or written anything quote-unquote good before to a published fiction writer. And by the way, I talk about this more on my Substack at jordanmckell.substack.com. I would love to have you in the community if this kind of thing is interesting to you. Now, step one for me was to take fiction writing classes, but, and this is very important, I think this is where, it's easy to mess up, do it strategically if you can. And don't give up when your writing is ripped to shreds, because it is absolutely going to be ripped to shreds, especially if you're like me, coming into this new. It's just part of the process, just like rejections. Now, here's something that I don't see a lot of people talk about, and I want to share this with you because I feel like it's just so important to succeed at anything, is to understand this hierarchy of competence. Because when we start to learn anything new, whether it's fiction writing or, something totally random, we start down here at the bottom of this pyramid at unconscious incompetence, and we move up only step by step until we reach unconscious competence, which is where we all eventually want to be, right? So with classes, I want you to think about this hierarchy of competence and where you are with your fiction writing currently. And it's kind of also why I recommend starting at the macro level, like big picture level, with learning fiction. Just take like a fiction writing 101 class or a beginner short story class or whatever. But then go micro with it, learning about, specific prose techniques or chapter openings or things like that. Once you are able to write and then pinpoint where your weak points are. So when you move up this pyramid to conscious incompetence, meaning where your weak points are, then you can go more in at that micro level and sort of like diagnose what's wrong with your writing. So then you can take classes strategically based on your specific struggles. So here's the thing. If you're a beginner, just like I was, you are going to start at unconscious incompetence, meaning you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what your strengths and weaknesses are. You don't even know what questions to ask to improve your writing. So just start with the basics. Take yourself a little fiction 101 writing class, the most general class, so you can just get the fundamentals down first. I started with basic short story writing and fiction writing 1 types of classes. I don't really take those anymore. Now I usually take more focused classes based on what I'm struggling with my short stories or my novel. But this is really the way that I think is the best approach and I think is the most helpful, especially if you are starting from scratch. So once I personally had a grasp on the basics of story structure and plot, kind of the macro, big picture level stuff, right? Then and only then did I start to get more specific and go into that micro level by taking classes about interiority, specific techniques, stronger dialogue, and so on. But for me, it was so critically important to learn the fundamentals first. Kind of like a little basketball comparison here, which is don't try to slam dunk before you have a basic grasp on making free throws and dribbling, right? There's levels to this. Literally, that pyramid that I showed you right here, this is showing you the levels, and I want to encourage you to invest in your skill set and educate yourself based on where you are at, which level you are at in this pyramid. Another little note here, which I really wanted to share because not a lot of people talk about this kind of thing, and I really want to normalize it for you. My first ever short story was ripped to absolute freaking shreds in the class I took, okay? I literally cried. Like, I'm not even kidding. I cried. The teacher said it was melodramatic, it was not believable, and it needed a ton of work. And this was a really serious thing for me, okay? Because I had poured my heart and soul into that short story. It was a 6,500 word piece about a mother who lost her son. But what it was really about for me was the grief that I experienced when I lost my 12-year-old Chihuahua/soul dog, Tito. Many of you have seen him here on this channel. He was absolutely everything to me, and it was just so soul-crushing when I lost him that I decided to pour that into my art and make a short story sort of based around my own experience with that very deep grief. But that made the critique sting even more. Like, it really hurt. And I knew the story wasn't perfect. I mean, it was my first short story ever, right? But that did not make that feedback from that instructor any easier to read. It felt excruciating. And as I sat there feeling like an embarrassment and a total and complete failure, I realized I had a decision to make. Would I sit with the discomfort of being bad, quote unquote bad at something so I could get better? Or would I give up so that I could avoid that discomfort? This is the decision that makes you either a writer or not a writer. Because everyone gets to that point where you have a rejection that really stings or you get a critique that really stings. And it's all about, are you able to sit in that discomfort and instead of taking it personal or taking it to heart, move forward and go, I'm going to see how I can use this as a learning opportunity and improve and get better. Obviously, feel your feelings. Like I said, I literally cried. But we've got to get to a point where we can also feel our feelings and then move on and keep going and keep working toward our dreams. It is so easy to give up when we receive criticism. Failure is uncomfortable and sharing your writing is incredibly vulnerable. But for me, I knew I could not let these setbacks stop me from doing exactly what the hell I wanted to do, okay? So I gave myself permission to be a beginner. I let myself feel all the feelings, and I reminded myself I was only going to get better at writing. Like, literally, I wasn't going to get worse because I was already pretty bad, right? I was only going to get better at it. And I told myself, I just need to take more classes. I just need to keep writing. I just need to keep learning. I opened my laptop again. I reread that feedback from a more centered place. I thought about what I could learn from it. And then I enrolled in another fiction writing class, and I kept writing short stories. I did not let those obstacles deter me. I did not give up. I kept on going. A couple months later, that's a really short time frame for an improvement like that, right? But I was so dedicated. Like, I was taking these classes, I was reading, I was writing a lot, I was doing my thing. And a couple months later, I took a new class, a different class, and I got this feedback right here on one of my stories. She said, Jordan, tender and moving story, and yes, it can be worked into a piece of flash fiction, which I think it almost is. One of my instructors told me that, and it just made me feel so validated, like the work I'd been putting in and the fact that I didn't give up, it was just all so worth it. And for the first time, I knew I had something that was potentially publishable. I had worked so hard to continue writing and improving in a short period of time. I would love to hear from you below. Tell me about how critiques have affected you, or failures, quote unquote, have affected you, rejections. Have you gotten rejections and harsh critiques? Have you stopped yourself from writing because you're afraid of those things? Let me know. I would love to open up this conversation in the comments because I feel like it's an issue that all of us, literally as writers, are dealing with. And I think if we talk about it, it normalizes it and may make it a little easier to deal with, or at least let us know that we are not alone in this process. But for me, that positive feedback was a huge turning point. I knew I had something I could pitch to literary magazines, and I knew I was finally at a point with my writing where I had the ability to create something publishable. Not perfect, but publishable. There's a big difference. Not absolutely perfect, gonna win a Pulitzer and win all these prizes. Publishable. Because there's a difference, okay? Just like on that pyramid, we're not gonna jump from beginner to best writer ever overnight. But you can go from beginner to publishable in a short time frame if you are willing to take these classes, invest in your skills, and of course, read and write and do that work. Here's the thing. With this pyramid, it's so important. Most people stop at conscious incompetence, meaning they are conscious of the fact that they are incompetent at writing, because that step is where you have the feeling of, oh my God, I suck at this, and I know how bad I am at this now. That is uncomfortable. Not something that is a joy to sit with. But the people who succeed at writing, or anything in life, you can apply this pyramid to virtually anything, are the ones who are willing to stick it out despite the discomfort. Because look at where we move up after conscious incompetence. If we keep going, then we're going to move up to conscious competence, meaning I am actually pretty good at this. And now I know I am good at this. Again, not perfect, maybe not the best writer in the whole entire universe, but good. You have competence and you are aware of that. But you have to go through these uncomfortable steps in the pyramid first. So, step 2, after taking those classes and, stepping my skills up, I started pitching my short stories and flash fiction pieces to literary magazines. But again, you do this strategically. I think this is so important to aim high and give yourself permission to be just a little bit delusional, or maybe even, if you're like me, a lot delusional, which I'll explain in a minute. So here is like one of the best resources ever on pitching. Erika Krouse's list of 500 literary magazines for short fiction. I'm going to link this below. It's an incredible free resource. If you can support her, if you can buy one of her books, if you can support her in any way, please do so. This resource, I can't even believe it's free. It's amazing. But she has ranked 500 literary magazines that you can submit your short fiction pieces to. So this 500 list is broken up into tiers. So tier 1, you can see here, let me move my head out of the way, is elite glossies, career makers, huge things, right? The New Yorker, like, you got to be a little bit delusional to pitch that on your first try, right? I did. I got rejected. That's okay. I'm glad I did it anyway because I learned so much. But anyway, it's broken up into these tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, and so on and so forth. What I recommend doing is starting as high as you feel comfortable with and then submitting your work in batches, okay? So maybe you write a piece and you're going to submit it to all the tier 2 Litmags. And then if you get all rejections there, then you move on to tier 3 and so on and so forth. But it really just depends on you and what, Litmag your piece fits and all these other different factors. But this is a good general rule. So here's kind of how I did it. The first short story I ever submitted, which I'm still pitching, it's still out on submission because in case you didn't know, Litmags can take 4 to 6 months or even longer to accept or even reject your work. But the first story I ever submitted, I started in tier 1, the epitome of delusional, okay? Myself pitching the New Yorker with like a little short story as a beginner, and it didn't get accepted. But, and here's a big thing, okay? I was gathering information, but it did get a high-tiered rejection from a tier 2 literary magazine. A higher tier rejection basically means that it's not a flat out, oh my gosh, no, I didn't want this, like this isn't good, etc., so on and so forth, all the awful things you never want to hear as a writer. A tiered rejection means they did like your work. They want you to submit again. Things like that can give you some validation as a writer, especially if you are getting those from really prestigious literary magazines. It gives you that information and that validation that you need. Now, for the story that I got published, I already knew about the Litmag. Like I said, X-Ray Literary Magazine, one of my faves, love reading their short stories because I had read a lot of their stuff. And I saw randomly on Twitter that they were looking for micro fiction specifically, which is what my piece was. Okay, so that is another really important piece of advice here. Really think about, is this piece a good fit for this literary magazine? And immerse yourself in the community a little bit. Like, follow Litmags on Twitter and Instagram, support literary magazines, support other writers, really be a part of the community, integrate yourself into it. And it's just good for the community, first of all, but second, you'll kind of be more in the know about which Litmags publish which types of stories and so on and so forth. But yeah, you can see how a targeted approach really, really helps. So I want you to start reading literary magazines, follow them on social, and note the ones that you think would be a good fit for your style of work. But please also do your research, okay? For example, do not send a sci-fi or horror story to a Litmag that doesn't publish those. A lot of these on this 500 list primarily publish literary fiction, so definitely keep that in mind. And then just get familiar with the Litmags, pitch them something you think would be a good fit based on your style, writing tone, etc. Here is my cover letter, by the way. My cover letter when I had Zip Zero Zilch Publications. I was a total newbie. Dear editor, I'm pleased to submit title of piece for consideration in title of Litmag. Here is the word count. This is a simultaneous submission. I'll withdraw it if someone else accepts it. Thanks, sincerely, me. Really, it is that simple. You know, I come from the world of freelance writing and copywriting where pitches need to be like way more in-depth and detailed and all this stuff. But really, when you are pitching a short story to a literary magazine, it's just about giving them the bare minimum basic information that they need. Unlike freelance writing and copywriting pitches, when you pitch your short story to a Litmag, the pitch is not going to be the thing that sells them. It is going to be your story. So just keep it really simple. You can literally copy my example that I have right here if you want and just switch out your information, send it off, and you're good to go. Now, I also want you to keep in mind that literary magazines might take 3 to 6 months to respond to you at all. Okay, especially if you're pitching those tier 1, 2, 3 Litmags, getting published can take a really long time. It's why I still have pieces that I wrote like a year ago, still out on submission, still looking for a home, okay? And a little side note here, it is great to start out pitching whatever tier of Litmag you want. Don't feel like just because I said I started pitching the New Yorker because I'm a little bit delusional and overly optimistic that you have to do that too. I want you to do what you feel best doing. I'm just sharing my own process for inspiration. Now, here are some great resources. Of course, we've talked about the Erika 500 list, but these are must-have sites that you need to use as well. Submittable, that is going to be how you submit your work to Litmags, okay? Chillsubs is where you can get more info about specific Litmags and find some that even aren't on the 500 list. You can organize them by different criteria. It is a really, really cool site. And Rejection Wiki, you can see if your rejections were tiered or not, meaning you can see if you got a regular rejection or a higher tiered rejection, which is basically the Litmag's way of saying, we liked this, we saw the potential, but for whatever reason it just didn't work out. It doesn't mean we didn't like the piece. That is information you are gathering and validation that what you are doing and what you are writing is good. So celebrate those tiered rejections because they are a really exciting thing. For me, I got dozens of rejections before getting a piece accepted. So I want to encourage you, do not give up. Keep writing, keep improving, and know that rejection is just part of the process of being a writer. And I highly recommend, again, check to see if your rejections were tiered or not using Rejection Wiki. Celebrate those tiered rejections, okay? They are an indicator that you're on the right track with your writing. These tiered rejections, while they were still rejections, built my confidence so much. Then you can also use a tool called Submission Grinder to see what percentage of rejections are personal, meaning tiered, higher tiered. And as a beginner, seeing that you're in the top 2% of submitters is super encouraging, right? Like, again, it's all about collecting that information. And when you have that kind of information, it builds your confidence and gives you validation in your writing. Okay, On to step 3. We're doing all the things. Now what you're going to do is you're going to write. And then you're going to write some more. And then you're going to write some more, right? Write a lot of shitty stories. And then maybe write some good ones. And keep educating yourself. Invest in your skill set. Emphasis on writing a lot of shitty stories, okay? Because remember, just like I showed you in that pyramid, you are not supposed to be good at this on day 1. Nobody is. Here is one of my favorite quotes from TV from our good friend Jake the dog here. Shout out to you if you are a lover of Adventure Time. Let me know below. I have seen every single episode so many times. One of my favorite shows ever. But he says, sucking at something is the first step toward being sort of good at something. I've already shown you that in the pyramid of competence, and it's just part of the process, okay? Don't let that get you down. Know that you are taking the first step toward becoming good at writing. But here's the thing. We don't just improve our skills magically, right? Just the act of writing itself is not going to improve your skill set. It does help. I'm not telling you not to do it because it helps. But what you need to do is be willing to invest in your skill set however possible. I highly recommend taking online courses. You can really benefit from not only the structure and critiques, but a main thing is the accountability, right? If you have a deadline to write a short story and post it in front of the class in 3 weeks, guess what? That short story is getting written within that 3 weeks and it is getting posted, okay? So critical to have that accountability. A lot of writers, myself included, when I started out, struggle with perfectionism and worry and putting things off and all these things. When you have that class accountability, you are going to get it done. And yes, button share writing time is important, but if we want to be improving our writing, we've got to take the classes too and learn what our weak points are and how to improve on those. I personally have invested easily thousands over the last year and a half in improving my fiction writing skill set, okay? I'm not saying that's what you have to do. You do what's right for you, okay? But this is what I have done. And I've spent countless hours reading and analyzing short stories, flash fiction, and novels to improve too, as well as, of course, spending a whole lot of time writing. Currently, I spend about 10 hours a week working on my fiction writing specifically. It's a good amount of time, and I think it goes back to saying it's important that you don't just have butt and chair time. Like, yeah, that's critical, but especially when you're a beginner and you're starting out, it's really, really important to improve your skills by taking online classes. I think for me, that was a crucial part of my process of improving my fiction writing skills. And pro tip, take classes that force you to write something while you're on a live call, or ones that force you to share a piece with the class at some point, okay? Here are 2 that I took. Kathy Fish, if you don't know her, she is an amazing flash fiction workshop teacher, and her classes are generative, meaning you write while you're on the 90-minute live call. I took, probably 7 or 8 of those because they were so good, and they forced me to sit down and write, which made them well worth it. And by the way, the piece that I got published was a direct result of one of the prompts she shared in one of her classes. So really cool stuff. Another class I took was the UC Berkeley Extension Short Story classes. My gosh, that is a bit of a tongue twister. And now I can't speak at all. But yeah, that was another one of the classes that I took, and it had that deadline where you are required to write a short story and share it with the class on X date. That accountability, there's nothing that can replace that. It is so helpful. Step 5, you're writing, you're pitching, you're educating yourself, you're going to keep going, you're brushing off those rejections. What you're going to do is keep writing, keep pitching, and stay at least a little bit delusional, okay? Going from beginner to publish takes time. That's totally normal, and it is okay. Remind yourself that rejection and being quote unquote bad at something is just part of the process. Harsh critiques are going to happen. That's just as much a part of being a writer as rejections, right? Your goal is not to be perfect on day 1. It is to move up this pyramid one little step at a time. And that means you got to stick it out through these periods of feeling like you're incompetent before you can get to conscious and then unconscious competence. Don't get stuck at conscious incompetence. That is the place where people stop, where they give up. because knowing that you're not as good at something as you want to be really sucks. Okay, I know, I've been there. It is deeply uncomfortable, but keep going and know that feeling like you're not good at this is just part of the process. Thank you so much for watching this video today. I had such a fun time teaching this. Please ask me any questions you have about the short story submission process or anything I talked about today down in the comments below. I love hearing from this community. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to join over 28,000 writers in my free Substack community, I share monthly updates there. It's super chill. I'm not like in your inbox every day or anything like that. It's literally right now once a month. I just do a month in review, update you on my fiction writing and pitching process. I talk a little bit about my freelancing and my online writing business. And of course, I share really cute pictures of my dogs, which I think that alone makes it worth it. So before you head out, go check that out and subscribe on Substack, subscribe here to the channel, leave a comment and let me know your thoughts. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.